Hello and welcome to the GrapeSEED Official Podcast. Today will be the second episode of GrapeSEED Greatest Hits, and we welcome Jodie Shell back to the show. She was on a 10 Things podcast way back in episode 37, so check that out after this one if you haven't already. So welcome back to the show, Jodie.
Thank you so much for having me back, Adam.
No problem. For listeners who didn't catch the first GrapeSEED Greatest Hits in episode 64, this series will highlight three of the most famous GrapeSEED components. The guest and I will go in depth on each, sharing personal stories as well as highlighting teaching tips and discussing learning objectives and directions in the lesson plans. So here, Jodie, I chose one and you chose two. Let's start with your picks. First up, Mouse in the Barn from Unit 1.
Yeah, so one of my very favorite components ever is the story Mouse in the Barn from Unit 1.
Okay.
And there are lots of reasons that I really love Mouse in the Barn. Of course, if you're a familiar listener out there, you know that when the cat comes onto the scene and the big meow happens, that just really captures the children's attention. And over time, they start to join in with that. And so that's definitely one of the main reasons that I love that story, just seeing the children's reaction to that one simple little word.
Definitely. It's one of the first materials in GrapeSEED where there's like that drama element added into the story where it really builds up through it.
Yeah, absolutely. And just the idea that the children need to infer what's happening because the picture is of the shadow of the cat and not just the cat. So they really need to kind of show their comprehension and sort of understand what's going on with that. So that's pretty neat too.
Yeah, and you can do that with your storytelling, just starting out, you're slowly kind of guiding the mouse to the house and then up on the table. And then, of course, when the big reveal happens, you want to tell the rest of the story at a slightly increased pace just to kind of give the students the feeling that the mouse is running away, but not obviously too fast that you're just speeding through the words and your students can actually hear them.
Yeah, absolutely. That's something to be careful of. You're totally right, because we do want to kind of build that excitement and make it sound like down the chair, off the table, on the floor. And we still want to make sure that while we're doing that and building that energy, that boys and girls can join in with the words over time, that they can clearly hear and understand what we're saying. So you're right.
Exactly.
Another reason that I really love Mouse in the Barn is that I've seen teachers do some really neat things where they're either using props or realia to kind of dramatize the story over time. They can let the children sort of act it out a little bit using some of the props and things like that they may have in the classroom. And I've even, Adam, seen teachers create obstacle courses either in their school gymnasium or outside at recess and let children kind of reenact the story outside of the GrapeSEED lesson during a special time of the day. So that's always really neat as well.
Absolutely. Because what do the quick checks and the learning objectives of this material focus on? They focus on those prepositions, those directional prepositions, getting kids to understand what those are. So having a little obstacle course can be a really fun way to convey the meaning, demonstrate the meaning, and get your students really enjoying using that language as well.
Absolutely. Yeah. The whole idea of in the something and out of the something else and through the something else, that is the main gist of what we want boys and girls to understand with Mouse in the Barn. So yeah, you're totally right. That's a really neat way to sort of drive that home.
Especially when we think about that language, because of course it's just useful English in general, but this is Unit 1, right? These are brand new kids to GrapeSEED. 4 years old, really young. And what do these words actually help us do? They also help us with a lot of classroom management, giving students directions and helping them understand where you want them to be and where you want them to move. And getting these concepts to them will help your classroom management right off the bat really well.
Yeah, you're right. When we want our students to come in and put maybe their jacket on a hook. So they may not have heard the word, they wouldn't have heard the word jacket or hook yet in Unit 1, but the whole idea of putting something onto something else or put your book in your desk or in your locker. Even though some of those vocabulary words might not be something that the children quite understand, they are starting to learn those language expressions. So that's something that's really important for management, like you said.
Definitely. And even if we look in the lesson plans themselves here, so I've got Unit 1, Lesson 5 in front of me. Looking at the directions here, use a box and prop. Using a box and prop, model in the box and out of the box. So even early on, we're demonstrating meaning using that realia like you're talking about. That stuff is directly here in the lesson plans, helping your students understand those concepts from really early on. Lesson 5 here, for example.
Yeah. And, I've seen teachers do that extension that you're talking about, that idea from the lesson plans, using a box, maybe a shoe box or a delivery box from Amazon or somewhere else. And they also are using maybe an animal figure from their play center time, where they might have some zoo animal figurines and that kind of thing. So it's really neat to see a teacher use a little toy zebra or a little toy monkey or a little toy elephant that they might just happen to have in their classroom.
Goodbye, my friends, goodbye. I'm sad to say goodbye. It was a good day, but now I will say goodbye, my friends, goodbye. Goodbye, everyone.